Welcome to our deep dive into the life and work of Émilie du Châtelet.
Oh, yes.
We've got a biography here, some school worksheets about her, and even an article about scientific instruments of her time.
Yep.
Our mission today is to uncover what made Émilie such a revolutionary figure.
Right.
And explore how her achievements fit into the broader scientific landscape of the 18th century.
It's fascinating to think about how Emily's story challenges the prevailing narratives.
Yeah.
About women's roles in the 18th century.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's almost as if 18th century France had a rule book for women.
Yeah.
Be beautiful,
Yeah.
be silent, and maybe maybe learn some embroidery.
Right.
But Émilie
Yeah.
decided to rip up that rule book and rewrite it with her own equations.
Precisely the sources that we have really paint a picture of a woman
Yeah.
who actively pushed against those societal limitations.
I love it.
Just imagine her debating the finer points of calculus at Parisian cafes.
Oh, wow.
While rocking the latest fashions.
Oh.
It truly challenges our preconceived notions of what a scientific mind looked like during that era.
For sure.
Yeah.
One of the sources mentions that she was fluent in 6 languages
Wow.
by the time she was a teenager.
That's amazing.
That's incredible. Was that typical for someone in her position at that time?
While a high level of education was common among the aristocracy,
Right.
mastering 6 languages by her teens is quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
This speaks volumes about her upbringing,
Yeah.
her access to exceptional tutors,
Right.
and a natural thirst for knowledge that went far beyond what was typically expected of women,
Right.
even those of her social standing.
So even with her privileged education, she couldn't just walk into the scientific world, could she?
No.
The sources mention that women were barred from scientific academies.
Absolutely. The scientific institutions of the time were very much a boys' club.
Really?
So a
Boys' club.
Emily took matters into her own hands.
I love this already.
She built her own laboratory.
Wow.
And not just any lab. She had one constructed within her own mansion. Talk about making a statement.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's an incredible display of determination. But was that common for wealthy women of that era? Did having access to those resources play a significant role in her impact?
Having resources certainly played a part.
Right.
Not every woman, even with Emily's intellect and drive,
Right.
could afford to build a private laboratory.
Yeah.
This allowed her to pursue her research independently,
Yeah.
outside the constraints and biases
Oh, sure.
of those male-dominated institutions.
Yeah.
However, resources alone
Right.
don't fully explain the impact she had.
Okay.
It was her dedication, her undeniable brilliance,
Yeah.
and her willingness to challenge conventional thinking that truly set her apart.
That's so cool. And of course, we can't talk about Émilie du Châtelet without mentioning her relationship with Voltaire.
Of course now.
They were more than just a famous couple. They
Yeah.
were an intellectual powerhouse. Their time together at the Château de Cirey was like an ongoing research retreat. Did their partnership amplify their individual work, or was it more of a personal support system?
It was definitely a combination of both.
Okay.
The sources describe a dynamic intellectual environment where they collaborated, debated, and inspired each other's work.
Oh, wow.
They pushed each other to think critically and
Yeah.
creatively.
I like that.
But it's equally important to recognize that their relationship provided a crucial support system for Emily,
Yeah.
especially given the significant societal pressures she faced as a woman pursuing science.
Right. Speaking of defying expectations, the sources mention that Émilie didn't simply translate Newton's Principia Mathematica. She actually improved it. Can you give us some context on this? Just how big of a deal was this? And what specific contributions did she make to Newton's theories?
This is where we really see Emily's genius shining through.
Oh, okay.
Translating Newton's work from Latin into French was already an incredibly demanding task. But Emily went above and beyond.
Okay.
To put this into perspective,
Yeah.
Principia Mathematica is considered one of the most important works in the history of science,
Right.
laying the foundations for classical mechanics.
Okay.
Emily added her own extensive commentary,
Wow.
clarifying complex concepts and even correcting some of Newton's mathematical errors.
Oh, wow.
At the time,
Yeah.
Newton's work,
Yeah.
while groundbreaking,
Right.
was also notoriously dense and difficult to understand.
Okay.
Emily's translation and commentaries made it accessible to a much wider audience,
Wow.
significantly influencing the spread of Newtonian physics throughout Europe.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's one thing to translate a complex work, but to improve upon it is remarkable.
Right.
And then there's her work on kinetic energy.
Yeah.
The sources say she proved that kinetic energy is proportional to the square of the velocity.
Right.
A concept that remains fundamental to physics today. Can you break this down for us? What practical applications did this have in her time? And how does it impact us now?
Imagine you're pushing a shopping cart.
Okay.
The faster you push it, the more energy it has.
Okay.
That much seems obvious.
Right.
But Emily's insight was that the energy of the cart isn't directly proportional to the speed
Right.
at which you're pushing it,
Okay.
but to the square of that speed.
Okay.
This means if you double the speed of the cart, the energy doesn't just double.
Yeah.
It increases fourfold.
Wow.
This is a revolutionary concept in the 18th century,
Okay.
overturning long-held assumptions about motion and energy.
That's a really interesting way to think about it. It makes you realize how groundbreaking her work was.
Exactly. While it didn't have immediate practical applications in her time,
Okay.
it was a crucial step in our understanding of energy.
Yeah.
In essence, she laid the groundwork for future advancements in fields like mechanics and engineering.
Yeah.
Today, this principle is at the heart of how we design everything,
Wow.
from cars and airplanes to rockets.
So she was shaping the future of technology without even realizing it.
Exactly.
That's mind-blowing. But it seems her interests weren't limited to just physics.
Right.
The biography mentions her involvement in fencing, gambling, music, and philosophy.
Yeah.
Were these common pursuits for intellectuals during the Enlightenment?
It's fascinating.
And did these activities influence her scientific thinking,
Yeah.
or were they just hobbies?
It's fascinating how this ties into the broader intellectual landscape
Okay.
of the Enlightenment.
Okay.
Many thinkers of the time were polymaths,
Right.
pursuing a wide range of interests.
Yeah.
It was an era that celebrated intellectual curiosity and exploration across disciplines.
Yeah.
Emily's diverse pursuits likely fueled her scientific thinking
Yeah.
by fostering creativity,
Mhm.
critical thinking,
Right.
and a broader perspective on the world.
So she wasn't just compartmentalizing different areas of knowledge. She was allowing them to interact and influence each other.
Exactly. And that's a key element of the Enlightenment ethos.
Yeah.
The idea that knowledge is interconnected.
Right.
And that insights can come from unexpected sources.
I like that.
It's about embracing the richness and complexity of the world
Yeah.
and using all of your intellectual tools to understand it.
I like that we also have this article about key scientific instruments of the scientific revolution.
Right.
Telescopes, microscopes, clocks, barometers, thermometers, air pumps.
Yeah.
Were any of these tools relevant to Emily's work? And how did these innovations change the landscape of scientific discovery during her lifetime?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
While the sources don't explicitly state which instruments she used,
Okay.
it's highly likely that she was aware of
Yeah.
and influenced by these advancements.
Okay.
The scientific revolution was a period of intense discovery,
Right.
and these tools opened up entirely new avenues of exploration.
Yeah.
For instance, the telescope revolutionized astronomy,
Okay.
leading to significant challenges
Right.
to long-held beliefs about the universe.
Right.
Meanwhile, the microscope revealed a previously invisible world of microorganisms,
So, wow.
profoundly altering our understanding of life itself.
That's interesting.
Even though Emily's primary focus was theoretical physics
Right.
and mathematics,
Okay.
she was undoubtedly part of this larger intellectual milieu
Okay.
where scientific instruments were transforming how people understood the world.
It's incredible to think about what she accomplished in her relatively short life.
Yeah, it is.
Sadly, she died at the young age of 42. Can you talk about how her work paved the way for future women in STEM?
Yeah.
What lasting impact did her defiance of societal norms have?
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Okay.
Emily's story is both incredibly inspiring
Right.
and tragic.
Yeah.
Her untimely death cut short a brilliant career,
Oh, yeah.
but her legacy most definitely lived on
Okay.
by publishing under her own name,
Yeah.
by daring to challenge the scientific establishment,
Right.
and by refusing to be confined
Yeah.
by the traditional roles assigned to women.
Right.
She became a powerful role model
Yeah.
for future generations of women in STEM.
Right.
Her work helped to chip away at the barriers that excluded women from science,
Yeah.
proving that brilliance has no gender.
It's a reminder that brilliance can emerge from anywhere.
Right.
even when the world tries to put limitations on it.
Yeah.
But her story also highlights the systemic barriers that existed.
Right.
And to some extent still exist today.
Absolutely.
Emilie had the privilege of wealth and connections,
Yeah.
which undeniably contributed to her ability to pursue science.
Right.
It makes you wonder what the world would have been like if more women had access to those same opportunities.
Absolutely. While we celebrate her individual achievements,
Right.
it's crucial to acknowledge those systemic barriers.
Yeah.
And the need to create a world where everyone, regardless of their background or gender,
Right.
has access to education
Yeah.
and opportunities to explore their passions.
Right.
Emily's story serves as a powerful reminder that potential can be stifled by inequality, and that we have a responsibility to advocate for a more just and equitable world
Right.
where brilliance like hers can truly flourish.
So while we celebrate her achievements,
Right.
we also recognize the work that still needs to be done to ensure that everyone has the same opportunities.
Absolutely.
It's almost as if she planted a seed, and even though it was cut short, it still grew into something powerful.
Exactly. And that's what makes her story so compelling.
Yeah.
It's not just about a brilliant scientist from the past.
Yeah.
It's a call to action for the present and the future.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the potential that exists within every individual.
Right.
And working to create a world where that potential can be realized.
Yeah.
A world where brilliance like Emily's is not the exception but the norm.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Uh-huh. It really does make you think about the countless discoveries that might have been made if societal structures had been different. But let's delve back into her scientific work for a moment. I'm particularly struck by her research on kinetic energy. It was a truly groundbreaking concept, wasn't it?
It was indeed. I'm still trying to fully wrap my head around it. It seems like such a fundamental concept now, but it was a major shift in understanding at the time.
Before Emilie, most scientists believed that an object's kinetic energy was directly proportional to its velocity. She definitively proved that it's actually proportional to the square of the velocity, which makes a huge difference. To illustrate, if you double the speed of an object, its kinetic energy increases fourfold, not just twofold.
So it wasn't just about how fast something was moving, but the force behind that speed. That completely changes how we think about motion. But how does she actually prove this? Does she have access to the kinds of equipment we use today to measure these things?
That's where her ingenuity really shines. She might not have had modern equipment, but she was resourceful, using the tools available to her and combining meticulous observation with rigorous mathematical analysis. One of her key experiments involved dropping weights from varying heights into clay. By carefully measuring the depths of the impact craters created by each weight, she was able to demonstrate the relationship between velocity and kinetic energy.
That's remarkable. She was practically MacGyvering her way through scientific discovery. She even managed to enhance and improve upon Newton's Principia, which seems almost impossible. Can you elaborate on some of the specific ways she corrected or expanded upon his work?
It's important to remember that Newton's Principia, while revolutionary, was also incredibly dense and challenging to comprehend even for seasoned scientists. Emilie's translation wasn't merely a linguistic feat. It was about making the concepts clearer and more accessible to a wider audience. She achieved this by adding extensive commentaries, explaining particularly difficult passages, filling in conceptual gaps, and even pinpointing areas where Newton's logic or mathematical calculations could be refined.
So she wasn't just translating, she was adding her own insightful analysis and interpretations. It's as if she was saying, Newton, you're brilliant, but let me clarify these concepts so that everyone can appreciate your genius.
Precisely. And in doing so, she wasn't trying to diminish Newton's work, but rather to elevate it and ensure its lasting impact. For instance, she clarified the concept of inertia, which was central to Newton's laws of motion, but often misunderstood at the time. She also provided a more comprehensive explanation of the relationship between force, mass, and acceleration, further solidifying Newton's groundbreaking ideas.
It sounds like her translation was a scientific contribution in its own right. It's incredible to consider that she accomplished all of this while navigating a complex social life, raising a family, and generally defying societal expectations. It's a poignant reminder of what could have been achieved if she had lived longer.
It's a truly haunting thought. She died at the young age of 42, likely due to complications from childbirth. Imagine the groundbreaking discoveries she might have made if she had been given more time. It highlights the tragic loss of potential due to societal limitations placed on women and the inherent dangers associated with childbirth during that era.
It's a stark reminder that we must continue to push for a world where brilliance like hers is not stifled or cut short due to circumstances beyond their control. We need to learn from her, celebrate her, and continue advocating for a world where everyone has the opportunity to fulfill their potential.
Absolutely. And one of the best ways to honor her legacy is by understanding her within the broader intellectual context of the Enlightenment. We've discussed her specific contributions to physics, but it's important to see her as part of a larger movement that was transforming the way people thought about the world. The Enlightenment emphasized reason observation and the power of human intellect to understand the universe. It was a time of questioning traditional authority and embracing new ideas.
So she wasn't just a lone genius working in isolation. She was part of a vast, interconnected network of intellectuals who were collectively pushing the boundaries of knowledge.
Exactly. She was a prolific letter writer and corresponded with some of the greatest minds of her era, mathematicians, philosophers, naturalists. She was heavily influenced by the work of Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, the German polymath who developed calculus independently of Newton. She also engaged deeply with the ideas of René Descartes, a French philosopher who championed reason and logic as the foundations of knowledge.
It sounds like she was part of a massive Europe-wide brainstorming session with everyone challenging each other to think bigger, question deeper, and ultimately challenge the status quo.
That's a fantastic way to put it.
Yeah.
And while she thrived within this vibrant intellectual community, it's crucial to remember that she also faced significant resistance from some within the scientific establishment. Keep in mind, this was still a time when women were largely excluded from formal scientific institutions. She had to constantly fight for recognition and defend her work against those who dismissed her simply because of her gender.
It's almost inconceivable that someone so brilliant and accomplished had to grapple with that level of sexism. It makes her achievements even more remarkable. But it also raises the question, how did she manage to overcome these obstacles? What strategies did she employ to gain recognition and ensure that her voice was heard?
This is where her personality and social skills come into play. Sources describe her as witty, charming, and fiercely determined. She wasn't afraid to engage in debate with the most renowned thinkers of her day, and she skillfully used her social connections to build a network of support for her work. She was also strategic in how she presented her ideas, often framing her arguments in a way that resonated with the male-dominated scientific community. For example, she emphasized the practical applications of her research, highlighting how her findings could be used to improve engineering and technology.
So she was playing the game, so to speak, but on her own terms. She used her intellect, charm, and strategic acumen to carve out a space for herself in a world that wasn't designed to include women like her.
Precisely. And that's what makes her story so profoundly inspiring. She wasn't just a brilliant scientist. She was a trailblazer who defied expectations and paved the way for future generations of women in STEM. Her life serves as a testament to the power of resilience, determination, and the unwavering pursuit of knowledge, even when confronted with seemingly insurmountable adversity.
It's also a powerful reminder that progress isn't always linear. Even though she made remarkable strides, the fight for equality in science continues today. We still have a long way to go before everyone has the same opportunities to pursue their passions, regardless of gender or any other factor.
That's a crucial point. Emily's story isn't just about celebrating individual achievement. It's also about recognizing the systemic barriers that continue to persist and working actively to dismantle them. It's about fostering a world where brilliance like hers can flourish without individuals having to overcome countless obstacles simply to exist and contribute their talents.
Her story seems to be calling us to action. To learn from her, celebrate her, and continue to push for a world where brilliance is not stifled or extinguished due to circumstances beyond an individual's control. But how do we apply her legacy to our own lives and the world around us? What would Emilie want us to do with the knowledge we've gained through this deep dive into her life and work?
That's the question we'll explore as we move into the final part of our exploration.
It's inspiring to think that even centuries later, her story can still resonate so deeply and motivate us to create a more inclusive and equitable world. It seems like her life embodied a pursuit of knowledge that extended far beyond the realm of physics.
Absolutely. Emily's life truly exemplified a commitment to pushing boundaries and challenging conventional thinking, not just in science, but in all aspects of her life. Remember her passion for fencing, gambling, music, and philosophy? These weren't just hobbies. They were expressions of a multifaceted intellect that refused to be confined.
It's as if she was demonstrating that intellectual curiosity shouldn't be limited to a single discipline or field of study.
Precisely. And that's a valuable lesson for all of us. Embracing diverse interests, can enrich our thinking, spark creativity, and help us become more well-rounded individuals. Emily's life was a symphony of intellectual exploration, and she encourages us to compose our own unique melodies of learning and discovery.
It makes you wonder how those seemingly non-scientific pursuits might have influenced her approach to scientific thinking.
That's a fascinating question to consider. It's very likely that her engagement with music, philosophy, and even games of chance honed her analytical skills, strategic thinking, and ability to discern patterns and connections. The beauty of the Enlightenment was its emphasis on breaking down barriers between disciplines, recognizing that knowledge is interconnected and that insights can often emerge from unexpected sources.
It's like she was cross-training her brain, exercising different intellectual muscles, which ultimately made her a stronger and more creative thinker overall.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. But perhaps even more importantly, Emily's story challenges us to question assumptions and to actively work through a more equitable world. We've discussed the immense societal barriers she had to overcome to pursue her passion for science. She couldn't attend universities, was excluded from scientific academies, and faced constant skepticism and dismissal because of her gender.
It's disheartening to think about all the potential that has been lost throughout history simply because of these kinds of barriers. We can't change the past, but we can certainly learn from it and work to create a more just future.
Absolutely. Emily's legacy challenges us to advocate for equal access to education and opportunities for everyone, regardless of gender background or social standing. It's a powerful reminder that brilliance can exist anywhere, and we have a responsibility to create a world where everyone has the chance to shine.
Her story isn't just about remembering a remarkable woman from history. It's about taking her story and using it as fuel to ignite change in our own time. It's about striving for a world where everyone has the freedom to explore their passions and contribute their unique talents to the world, just as Emily did.
Beautifully said. And as we reflect on that final thought about her book on happiness, perhaps we can consider that for Emily, true happiness resided in the relentless pursuit of knowledge, the sheer joy of discovery, and the courage to defy limitations. She reminds us that even when facing adversity, the human spirit has an incredible capacity to soar to unimaginable heights.
That's a powerful message to carry with us long after this deep dive is over. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery into the extraordinary life and legacy of Émilie du Châtelet.